Hello?
Hi, Musa, are you there? There seems to be a bit of confusion with the links and stuff, but I think they are sorting it out.
Okay. I'm Miss Chikune, so I was supposed to be the first one to present on this room, I think.
Oh, okay. Musa, are you there?
Good morning, everybody. Apology for that. Apology for coming in late. It seems like I was going into the other rooms. So I think we can start. I will be just introducing the authors. I see that there's a 15 minutes that is scheduled for each person. I am going to ask you to stick within the time frames, because if we are not going to stick into the time frames, then we're going to run out of time. So I'm really going to ask you to stick within those time frames. If there's any questions, please put that questions in the chat. We will also be having the questions and engagement after the first four speakers. And then we will be going from there. So the first author is, I'm not sure who will be presenting, is Sedzani Chikundu, Mabulela Velunzani, and Funzani Mutsitsi from the University of Venda. The title of the presentation is The Impact of Gentrification on Access to Resources by Different Communities in Polokwane. I'm not sure who is going to present. If you can then just share your presentation, and then you can proceed. Thank you.
I see that the screen sharing is disabled from host, so I'm unable to share my screen.
Can I request that the screen share be enabled?
It should be good now. Your password.
Thank you. I'm Sedzani Chikunde, Ms. Sedzani Chikunde from University of Venda, and I'm the one who will be presenting on the impact of gentrification on access to resources by different communities in Polokwane. So as an introduction, I'll be investigating gentrification consequences in Polokwane, and my focus area is on resource access for different communities, issues of housing, healthcare, education, and essential services. So these are my objectives, which is to examine the impact of access to resources, identify factors contributing to disparities, explore intersectional dimensions, assess effective strategies from other cities, and other objectives that I mentioned. So Polokwane is a capital city of Limpopo province. Its history emanates from the 1880s as a trading post and an agricultural center. Its population is approximately 628,000 residents. This is from the 2021 information. The demographics, culturally diverse, Pedi, Tsonga, vendors, and etc. Its urban development is a rapid growth and urbanization. Gentrification trends is notable in some neighborhoods, especially near the city center. So the impact, therefore, is mixed consequences on property values, housing affordability, and resource access for different communities. And understanding this trend is crucial for access to resources amidst gentrifications. So we need to understand the concept of gentrification as is an urban renewal process characterized by the influx of wealthier residents into lower income neighborhoods. This transformation often leads to physical improvements, increased property values, and changes in the neighborhood's character. And there are different causes of gentrification, which are emanating from economic, housing, and urbanization. So in areas with economic potential, attract investment and affluent residents. And there's a desire for urban living and proximity to amenities, which drives demand for these neighborhoods. As a result, increased urbanization and limited land availability push development into existing communities. So there are different effects, therefore, which are rising housing costs, displacements, and changes in community character, wherein property values increase, making housing less affordable for existing residents. There are long-time residents, often low income, may be forced to leave due to rising costs. And also the arrival of wealthier residents can alter the neighborhood's social and cultural fabric. So there are typical characteristics within the neighborhoods that are gentrified, which are low-income areas. Gentrification often starts in economically disadvantaged neighborhoods and areas with historic architecture or cultural heritage may attract attention. Location closer to downtowns, public transports, and cultural amenities are also appealing. So therefore, understanding the complexities of gentrification, including its causes, effects, and typical neighborhood characteristics, is vital for policymakers and urban planners to address its impacts on communities. There are communities at risk within Polokwane, which are City Center, Old Ivy Park, and Bendo. As for City Center, is a central and historically significant area, which is at risk due to its proximity to amenities, commercial establishments, and government institutions. The Old Ivy Park has shown signs of gentrification with increased property development, investment, and potentially impacting long-time residents. And Bendo is an upcoming suburb that has attracted investments, leading to possible changes in property values and demographic shifts. There are impacts of gentrification on housing, which are rising housing costs, displacement of low-income residents. With rising housing costs, gentrification attracts wealthier residents and investors. As I've mentioned this point also as I'm going through there, that the housing prices surges, making it challenging for low-income residents to afford homes or rentals. So it's actually a plus for those who can afford. So displacement of low-income residents, rising costs force long-time or low-income residents to um, leave their neighborhoods due to financial constraints. So gentrification-driven displacement impacts vulnerable communities. And present data or case studies showing how housing prices have changed is in gentrifying neighborhoods. Another issue is the decreased affordable housing stock, wherein conversion of affordable housing into higher end residence or luxury developments reduces availability, limited affordable housing options for low-income residents. Gentrification spillover effects. Adjacent neighborhoods experience increased housing costs due to gentrification's ripple effects. Further impacts affordability and housing access. Displacement and relocation. Displacement impacts on vulnerable communities, wherein it often leads to the displacement of long-time residents, particularly vulnerable communities with lower incomes. Challenges faced by displaced residents is housing instability. Displacement disrupts residents' housing stability, leading to uncertainty and housing insecurity. The other issue is, hello, I'm busy, can you call me later? It's reduced access to resources, cultural disruption, increased commuting burden. Reduced access to resources, relocated individuals may face difficulties accessing essential services such as healthcare, education, and transportation. Cultural disruption is where displacement may sever cultural ties and community bonds, impacting the overall well-being of affected communities. Relocated residents might face longer commutes to work or schools, affecting their quality of life. Potential solutions are affordable housing initiatives, wherein we can implement policies that preserve or create affordable housing options in gentrified areas to support vulnerable residents. Tenant protections, where we can strengthen tenant rights and provide assistance to ensure fair treatment during the displacement process. Community engagements, wherein we can involve affected communities in urban planning and development decisions to address their needs and concerns. Equitable development, where we can encourage mixed-income development to foster inclusive neighborhoods and accommodate a diverse range of residents. We can also adapt measures to, on negative effects of gentrification and protect vulnerable communities. And another, access to education and urban development and its impact on education opportunities. There are positive and negative impacts, which one of the positive is that we increase funding and resources for schools in gentrified areas, improved infrastructure and technology for students, and a negative one is displacement of low-income communities, disrupting students' education, segregation, and unequal distribution of resources. Teacher retention, high cost of living may challenge teacher and staff retention, the need for competitive salaries and housing support, and solutions for equitable education, collaboration between city planners, educators, and community members, targeted funding to support non-gentrified schools and at-risk students, affordable housing initiatives for teachers and low-income families. Access to healthcare. Impacts of gentrification on the healthcare access, disparities in healthcare services for various communities, displacements of low-income residents, rising property values force low-income families to move. Relocation may result in reduced access to healthcare facilities. Changes in healthcare infrastructure. Gentrified areas may see an influx of healthcare facilities and services. Original residents might lose familiar healthcare providers. Economic barriers to healthcare. Increased cost of living may lead to limited access to healthcare for low-income communities. Health insurance coverage disparities. Healthcare services prioritization, which is focused on services catering to the needs of the incoming healthcare population. Original communities' health needs may be overlooked. Loss of community health programs. Displacement disrupts existing community health initiatives, reduce support for programs serving low-income residents. Mental health impacts. There are displacement and cultural shifts that can lead to stress and mental health challenges. Access to mental health services may become more critical but limited. Potential solutions are equitable urban planning to preserve affordable healthcare access, affordable housing initiatives to prevent displacement, collaboration between healthcare providers and community organizations. Gentrification can exacerbate healthcare disparities. Proactive measures are essential to ensure healthcare access and that all communities during urban development. Access to public services, transportation access, positive impact. Gentrification may attract better public transportation options. Negative impact, higher rents may force original residents to relocate, leading to longer commutes. Parks and green spaces, positive impacts. Gentrification may lead to park revitalization and increased maintenance. A negative impact, displacement may reduce original residents' access to nearby parks. Effects on social cohesion, displacement may lead to the loss of community ties and social support systems. Impacts on community cohesion and resilience. Balancing urban development. There's a need for equitable planning to avoid pushing out original residents. Inclusive urban policies to preserve access to public services for all. Economic opportunities. There are positive aspects of gentrification, which are increased economic opportunities, attraction of new businesses and investments, job creation and entrepreneurship opportunities, local business growth, revitalization of commercial areas, boost to small businesses and local entrepreneurship, improved infrastructure, enhanced public amenities and services, modernization of neighborhoods attracting businesses and residents. Gentrification offers economic opportunities but possesses challenges for inclusivity. Balanced urban policies and community-driven development are essential for inclusive economic growth. Community perspectives, increase economic opportunities, attraction of investments. Gentrification draws investors and entrepreneurs to the area. New businesses stimulates economic growth and job creation. Local business growth, revitalization of commercial spaces. Gentrification can breathe new life into neglected areas. Opportunities for small businesses to thrive. Tourism and revenue generation. Gentrified neighborhoods become tourist attraction. Tourism revenue benefits local businesses and municipal services. Policy and regulations. There's something wrong with my slides, but these are some of the policies and regulations that they can be used, which are zoning laws, land use regulations, and master plans. Mixed-use zone encourage diverse development, blending residential, commercial, and recreational spaces. Affordable housing mandates, inclusionary zoning, requirements for new developments to include affordable housing units, subsidized housing programs, government initiatives to provide affordable housing options, control and tenant protection, restriction on rent increase and eviction processes, safeguards against unjust evictions, and increase availability of affordable housing units, enhance security for vulnerable communities against eviction and unjust rent hikes, enforcement challenges and loopholes in zoning regulations, limited affordable housing units in comparison to demand. Unintended displacement, gentrification still displaces some vulnerable residents. Community engagement, stakeholder involvement, engaging affected communities in policy formulation and implementation, feedback, regular assessment and adaptation based on community feedback. Policy progress, existing policies and regulation demonstrate positively. Ongoing challenges are implementation gaps and supply-demand imbalances. Community-centric approach, strengthening community engagements, policy and regulations. Here are some of the pictures that are showing areas within Polokwane. And we have the mitigation strategies, which are affordable housing initiatives, mixed income development, integrate affordable and market rate housing to foster socioeconomic diversity, community land trusts, local control over land to preserve affordable housing and prevent displacement, rent subsidies, financial assistance for low-income residents to access market rate housing. Include approaches for promoting inclusive urban development, equitable economic development, small business support, microfinancing, cultural and creative hubs. Inclusive infrastructure, public transport improvements, community centers, and green spaces. Anti-displacement policy, tenant protection strengthened rent control, eviction safeguards, and tenant rights enforcement. Right to remain, provide legal and financial support for residents facing displacements, property tax relief, measures to prevent property tax increases leading to unaffordability, community engagement and empowerment, participatory planning, engage residents in decision-making processes, community land trust, empower local communities to collectively manage and own land, civic education, enhance residents' understanding of their rights and resources, data-driven decision-making, impact assessments, regularly evaluate policies to ensure they do not exacerbate disparities, gentrification monitoring, track changes in demographics, housing costs and resources over time, develop a framework to measure and address resource inequities. And we need balancing change. Mitigation strategies can counter negative impacts of gentrification on resource access. Collaboration among policymakers, communities, and stakeholders is vital. Inclusive approaches foster resilient, thriving cities for all residents. Mitigation strategies are new mixed-income apartments. This one is an example of Woodlawn Point to neighborhood. This neighborhood is the Obama presidential. It has an Obama presidential library, a revamped L stop, and a new Jewel Osco grocery store in it. So it's a mixed-income apartment with a library, food store, grocery store. Everything is there. And it's also promoting green infrastructure there. So what are our future outlook? We have the economic growth, infrastructure expansion, rising property values. So these are the present future gentrification in Polokwane. When it comes to economic growth, there's a continued economic development that may attract increased investment and development. Improved infrastructure could enhance accessibility and attractiveness of certain areas. Rise demand for real estate, drive property values upward in certain neighborhoods. Potential effects on communities, displacement. Vulnerable communities may face displacement due to rising housing costs. Gentrification can lead to the loss of cultural identity and community character. Access to resources like housing, education, and healthcare could become uneven. Importance of balanced urban developments. Balanced development ensures a mix of socio-economic groups within neighborhoods, encourages interaction and understanding among diverse populations, protects unique cultural elements that contribute to the city's identity. Sustainable growth as a solution, equitable resource allocation, wherein we can allocate resources based on affordable housing and inclusive infrastructure. So this is our future outlook. I am done. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation, and thank you for sticking to time. I think you just came in there, so thank you very much for that. Thank you. I'm going to ask the second presenter if you can stop sharing your screen. The second presenter, if you are here, Zuzeni Lemani and Moses Seleki from the RD University, Tanzania, Understanding Inclusive Cities. You can start with your share, and yes, if you can also stick to the time allocated. Thank you.
Okay, I want to ask you, can the slide be shared from that side or someone host? Hello?
Sorry, have you, I assume that you have sent through the slides.
Yes.
Musa, have you perhaps got it, or otherwise, if you can share it from your side, it will also assist.
Check.
While Zuzeni is busy trying to put up the slides, if there's any questions that you would like to ask Senzani, please put it in the chat, and then once we get to the questions and answers, we will be able to have a discussion regarding that. We can see your slides. We can just put it on presentation mode, and then you can continue.
Okay, thank you. I should think I'm ready now.
Thank you. If you can just put it on presentation mode, and then you can continue.
Is that okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so Susan Lehman, supposed with my colleague Moses Lake. I'm in Malawi, while Moses Lake is in Tanzania. In fact, we are students, our master's students at the university, pursuing a Master of Science in Urban Planning and Management. So this paper generally was like part of a seminar in our class, and we had a discussion, and we thought it after learning about this conference, maybe to share what we had, discussions we had. So this is my presentation outline. And now in terms of introduction, what I was saying is that we agree cities continue to be economic engines of the world. And we are saying that more than 70 to 80% of the global GDP generally, that's according to the author there, 2017 say that they are coming from the cities. And so in addition to that, the cities generally provide economic opportunities to people with various backgrounds, competencies, and needs. And as a result, the people continue to be attracted to these cities because of the expectations of like decent jobs and improved infrastructure and services, the diverse atmosphere, and also modern lifestyles that is available in the cities. And now the challenge is that we are saying that these economic, social, and cultural benefits of urbanization that are found in our cities, they are not equitably distributed among all segments in the urban in the urban setting, especially where this is in the cities of the global south. So we see that within the same city boundary, people living, enjoying different things. In other words, we see that there are certain segments which are enjoying significant wealth or access to opportunities, while others generally struggle. So as a result, this has created some division. That's why we're coming with the concept of divided cities. So these are some of the pictures to show us, like what now, before I show the pictures, want to look at the origins and the upside of the concept of inclusive cities. So we are saying that generally there are divisions within the cities, and a lot of people are marginalized, and we are saying, like, we have other areas, of course, it's like more or less like a repetition, that generally these areas have got good infrastructure, well-kept gardens, while others generally they have inadequate housing, for example, and the poor recreation activities. It's like in the same city, some people are living in paradise and others are living in hell within the same city. So, like, these are the pictures to show the division, the divided cities. Like, this is like in Mumbai, Skyline, this is just nearby their slums. So we see the division there. And also, this is in Durban, you can see that generally the other side has good housing, well planned, while the others is just overcrowded. And also, like here you have like in Kibera, that is Nairobi, we see poor sewer system there. Well, we look at in the same city of Nairobi, we have other areas which are like more or less having the benefits of the city, while others are in trouble. So inclusive cities is like one of the strategies to curb or to deal with the divided cities. So this is like more or less like a response. Of course, we have other we call them cities, like maybe in terms of terminology, they might mean the same, like the livable cities, the digital cities, or smart cities. But generally, when we talk about inclusive cities, that means we're trying not to leave anybody behind. So the origins of the inclusive city can be traced back to various social and political movements of the 19th century, including the civil rights movement, the feminist movement, and the environmental movement. And again, later the United Nations, through its Habitat conferences, like Habitat 1 that was held in Vancouver in 1976, emphasized the need to promote equitable and sustainable environment. And again, Habitat 2 held in Istanbul in 1996, called for new vision, like at least to cover for the diversity of the cities, and so that all the communities should participate in urban planning and decision making. And then that's now like in 2015, that was Habitat 3 that was held in Quito. Now this is like more or less like the climax of the inclusive cities, like especially we look at the Sustainable Development Goals and especially goal number 11, which is specifically advocates for inclusive, self-resilient, and sustainable cities. So even the urban agenda is there to support that the implementation of the goal 11, including the inclusive cities issue. So we have other organizations which are helping the implementation of the inclusive cities, like Cities Alliance, Habitat for Humanity, and all those organizations. And now, our understanding as students, we had to do a deep research, literature review. So our understanding, according to the Oxford Dictionary, defines inclusivity as inclusiveness as the practice or policy of including people which might otherwise be excluded or marginalized, such as maybe those with physical or mental disability and members of the minority groups. While the Cambridge English Dictionary defines inclusiveness as the action of trying to include many different types of people and treat them fairly and equally. So, of course, inclusiveness or inclusivity, some people might have some misconceptions about it. So maybe meaning that people should be the same, people should have the same income. No, that's not the issue. And maybe that others maybe should lower their standards so that to compromise, so that to accommodate everyone. This is according to law in 2012. Now, our understanding of the inclusive cities. So a conceptual framework for understanding inclusive cities can be built among the following building blocks. So we said that maybe one of it is age. So like this dimension ensures that the needs and likes of different age groups are met. So that includes the child, the space should be child friendly, should be friendly to the youth and also to the elderly. And again, the second one is the dimension or building block is the economic inclusion. So meaning that at least people of all the income groups, like the low income, middle income, and high income groups should be generally accommodated in the urban fabric. And the third one is social inclusion, which focuses on addressing the barriers faced by the marginalized social groups based on, for example, ethnicity or race and other social factors. The fourth dimension which we looked at is the inclusion of people under special circumstances. So like people who are vulnerable, like immigrants, refugees, single mothers, widowed men, street kids, like waste speakers, orphans, and physically challenged individuals. So generally, we need to have policies which could make sure that these people are taken on board in the city. And the other aspect which we looked at was structure inclusion. So looking at transport systems or spaces which should cater for the diverse needs of the population. So next, I just want to look at some of the best practices which we thought maybe they help us understand what an inclusive city is. So we have like, for example, in economic inclusion, we have the happiest park constructed by the Mahendra Life Spaces that is in India. So in this area, in this housing program, generally, there are housing units which cater for all the income groups, the economically weak sector, the low income, the middle income, and the high income. And also give an example of the city we live in, Dar es Salaam. We see that we interact with the Maasai people. They have been integrated, doing all sorts of things in the urban sector. And also give an example of age inclusion, like child-friendly city. Like, for example, have in Ahmedabad, that is in India, there is a kids city whereby it's a complex in which kids can go there and they relax and they at least feel like the urban life, how it is. So, for example, if you look at the top left there, you see, kids are practicing how to do firefighting, something like that. And to the top right, there kids are performing like in the form of court down there, like in the hospital. So, so that I think that and also youth-friendly spaces, like you give an example of New York. New York City at least, that public space which cater for the needs of the youth, like you can have basket courts, Wi-Fi, free Wi-Fi, so that meet their needs. And also age-friendly, give an example in Tokyo, where you have those benches for the area and also doing some exercises there. And also inclusion of special people with special circumstances. We're looking, for example, the migrants. So we have an example of Abu Dhabi. It's very fascinating. Fascinating. If you look at the percentage of people living in Abu Dhabi, you see that a lot of them are Indians and maybe the indigenous. I mean the citizens, like the Emirates, they're about 11%. So we see that we saw that this is like a city which accommodates immigrants by giving them all the opportunities which they need. And also you have the refugees. To give an example of the capital city of Jordan, which is Amman. Refugees are accommodated. They're given their needs. They have their own apartments, and of course there are others who might be disgruntled. A few of them would like their feet, thinking that maybe the refugees are being favored or giving more than what the people of Jordan should see. So that's the caption there of the graffiti. Maybe some other people might not. But also the other one is street children. So like you have an example of Gamalas, that is in Brazil, the capital city of Brazil, where still kids are taught, and also they are taught, they're helped that they cope up with life, and then they graduate maybe from the street, and then they live the normal life. And other groups like maybe on this one, I cannot speak one by one, but like have single mothers that is in Iceland, in that city. We don't remain also like in Auckland, West speakers like the municipal council of Pune in India, they have incorporated the West speakers and also street vendors. I think Cape Town stands out as one of the best cities which has accommodated the practices of the street vendors by providing maybe filters, which even facilities like sanitation facilities for them to use. And also orphans, I'm thinking across the world, there are like several souls, children, villages across the world trying to, in the cities of the world, to look at the needs of the orphans and also the physical change persons like in Stockholm, Sweden. That is one of the best examples. And also infrastructure inclusion, looking at like in the last one, example, we have this BLT system, which at least accommodates all types of transport. And also there is a boat phone booking application whereby you can cater even for the low-income people and which is cheap and easy to use. So the general observations are that these interventions, they are fragmented, and most especially in piecemeal. So we can have other cities that have one dimension, and the other cities may emphasize on one dimension. So the case studies which you have looked here, they have like given us like the benchmarks. Like, at least
1 minute.
What? Hello.
Just
Okay.
saying 1 minute.
Okay, fine. So, so what I was saying that the inclusive cities can be achieved through collective efforts, like international organizations, national governments, and all those. And also we are proposing for the integrated way, like the paper recommends for integrated approach of creating a true inclusive city. That means all these components, at least should have that being incorporated in one city, not maybe in piecemeal, not in small in small ways, but maybe in a more comprehensive and integrated way. So maybe the question, like we say, which other building blocks or components could be included for inclusive city? Maybe according to what we saw, and maybe we have other things which can include. And maybe the other reflection is the inclusive cities concept just a rhetoric, or it can really be put in practice in the developing countries? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, and thank you for also keeping to the time. I really appreciate that. I'm going to go straight over to the next presenter. You can, in the meantime, unshare your screen, and then the next presenters can start sharing their screen. Anupriya Agarwal and Poonam Prakash from the School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi, India, with the presentation title, The Power of Maps, Accessing and the Processes and Outcomes of Mapping Through a Participatory Lens at a Local Level. Over to you, sis. Can I just ask you to stop your share? Thank you. Now just confirm, Anupriya or Poonam, I'm not sure if you are here. If you can start with your presentation. Okay, I'm not sure if the two presenters are present. I'm not seeing them unless I'm missing them. Okay, I think let's go over to the next presenter, number 4, Rashid Makbul and Martins Augustine Ibong from the Northumbria University. If you can perhaps start with sharing your presentation.
Hi everyone, thank you Martin for introducing and giving this opportunity to present our research over here. I'm going to share my screen and please confirm you can see.
I can see your screen. If you can just put it on presentation mode,
Sure.
then you're ready to go.
All right. Thank you very much. And the research which I'm going to present today, this is about more of construction project management. Construction, we all see it has a very close touch towards city development and all urban areas development. And I was looking for my student Martin Augustine Ibong to present this topic because he is from Nigeria and he do have obviously more knowledge about the city of Ibadan to me. But one thing is good, he just got a job after completing his master's, and because of that reason, he was not able to present. But I would try to address some of construction specific things in it, not specific to Ibadan, but obviously if there are some things I would try to address after that. Okay. So we can start our presentation. We believe Ibadan is one of the biggest city in Nigeria, consisting around 100,000 population, and one of the biggest city. And obviously, a lot of developments are going on over there at the moment, and construction activities of developing new towns and new areas, which are quite dominant in recent years. And such infrastructure development, we can believe these are important for any country's growth, and these can introduce new economic situations for that particular region. And obviously, these things bring more social aspects as well as economic aspects and the environmental aspects if we do care. However, on the other side, if we say the construction are more of prone kind of material activities where a lot of resources we normally use in any building or infrastructure development. So normal statistics so far in recent years, what we have observed, it can take consume about 20 to 40% of energy. That is a very in a bigger picture. It depends on again country to country where that projects are going on. And then it can lead towards 30% of raw material. These materials are mostly wood, and we can say bricks and the other relevant materials required for any building infrastructure projects. And it can also lead towards greenhouse gas emissions, which the figures are also very high, and solar waste generation, for which actually dumping is a really big problem so far, mostly in developed countries. But on the same side, in developing countries, we also observed a lot of issues observed recently. So these things, of course, led to more related to circular economy perspectives recent years in construction and development activities. And these points can lead towards a future research as well. Recently, due to climate change issues, mostly industries and mostly countries are going towards limiting natural resources usage in different industries. The same thing we observed in the sustainable development projects are started in many countries and many towns recently. The same is we are expecting and happening at the Ibadan city recently. On the other side, we also see with the knowledge involvement and the new technology involvement in the recent years, the role of technology is leading towards that point where human involvement is getting less and less because more robotic technologies and more specific construction activities are coming in place at the moment. By considering all these points, as thorough literature review was observed from last few years. It is not a systematic literature review. A thorough literature review covered on the relevant major themes. For example, the major theme what observed so far relevant to this research is sustainability, awareness, and sustainable practices. So we have observed few studies based on this one. And we understood mostly studies were done on questionnaire-based research works so far, starting from 2009, 16, and 2021. And the second theme, which was leading in these city development construction project, is the material selection. It also had the major research works, which we have highlighted over here in the with the references. Which also go with the qualitative systematic literature review or hierarchical, analytical hierarchical processes. So these research are mostly giving these kind of pictures. And then reducing rework, because in construction activities or development projects, it involves a lot of processes, and part of processes, there are always some changes, part of activities, and any change can lead towards a rework and reuse of materials, which can lead towards a lot of waste. And of course, impacting a lot on that project economic situation as well as environmental position. So that is also very, very important point to consider in terms of green construction or green development, the areas of any city. Okay, moving on from reducing rework to the next point, alternative construction methods. Recently, these techniques in terms of modern methods of construction, building information modeling, digital twinning, and such all new methods, even including with the technology usage like robotics and the AI methods. These techniques are coming more in place with the time. So we also need to observe whether these techniques are equally applied, or the industries that developing countries are accepting or not. Such research review we have conducted. Then when any activity, any action, any industry take place are used, the compliance are the important things where the local governments and then the state government's policies and procedures need to be followed. These roles were also equally observed. And then finally, waste reduction and financial constraints. So waste is a major concern for every construction activity, and we believe it can lead towards 60 to 70% waste for every construction activity, where, however, we still having a challenge to dump 20 to 30% of waste in construction activities. Financially is a major concern for any project, and more specifically in development projects, where some governments have developed and idealized new ways through PPP-based projects. But again, that is not easily manageable. Because of that reason, we can see a very good example recently in last 10 years. Even UK government stopped going for PPP projects. Although some African countries and some other countries they are working for PPP projects, but these things can't be applied to every such sort of project. And of course, at the city level, normally when there are multiple projects are going on, it is very challenging to look on the relevant key stakeholder to find more of those PFI-based techniques. Okay, after going through these techniques, we finally observed about sustainable construction practices, and looking on all these thorough literature parts, we figured out roughly 8 factors with the support of literature and with the support of existing social practice theory. It was observed sustainability awareness and material selection. These are the key inputs over here, which are playing a positive role towards sustainable construction practices. On the other side, the 4 factors, for example, reducing rework, alternative construction methods, compliance improvement, and waste reduction, these are a kind of supporting things. These are mediating parts in between these input and output factors. Whereas the financial perspectives or financial aspects, whenever there are the city type projects are involving, the budgetary issues are the major concerns alongside. So it was also observed the financial points need to be observed as a moderating key player in this model. So after going through the complete literature review, a questionnaire was developed to understand the aim and objectives, and framework, as I have highlighted, was developed based on the theory and literature. And how the data was observed, it was used through multi-method approach by using self-administrative questionnaire as well as the matrix questionnaire. So these are two techniques observed for collecting data. And the homogeneous purpose of sampling was used. For that purpose, a snowball kind of criteria was used to understand on the relevant people who have a knowledge of sustainability and construction activities and who are directly involved in such projects in Ibadan city. So finally received around 256 responses from this city through normal systematic, the self-administrated questionnaire survey, as well as around 6 to 7 normal questionnaire, matrix-based questionnaire. And then the final recommendation happened through analysis techniques, for example, through correlation, hierarchical multiple regression analysis, and then the other parts. I think I have highlighted over here, next slide, but let me go through the normal data setup, which is a part of 254 responses. And we can see the key distribution of professionals who were part of this survey. And we can observe the mostly people were the civil engineering background. And the second were more of a project management, who were fields which are working on these projects in the Ibadan city. So they do definitely have a knowledge of relevant projects and very much knowledgeable of social aspects of such projects, economic aspects as well as the environmental aspects. So these points where we observed the people were from different backgrounds, so they can give us any opinion they belong from their fields and they're having a good knowledge of. So if we see the industry experiences, so we can see it is scattered around between 5 years to 20 years. So although mostly people are having around less than 5 years experiences, but at the same time, if we combine 5 to 10 years as well as 10 to 20 and above 20 years experiences, these figures are we can say 2 to 3% extra, so 2 or 3 point. So which can also observe the leading the validity of these responses. So then the same goes with educational distribution, where we have observed the mostly respondents were with the postgraduate, their qualification. So they do definitely have a proper education on the respective fields, so which can also lead towards a positive outcome for our data. Initial screening of data was happened through reliability validity checks. Then second, in order to understand the correlation between factors, we have adopted 8 factors for this model. It was observed. And then the second stage of model was conducted through structural equation modeling to understand the causal analysis between the factors. And in order to understand the moderating, or we can say negatively influenced factor of financial constraints to hierarchical multiple regression analysis. For a final stage, in order to validate our model, to understand how those factors are impacting on city development projects in terms of sustainability, and interpretive structural modeling was conducted on matrix-based questionnaire survey, not on the same questionnaire survey, as it is difficult to manage because of validity point of view. We observed the second method. I'm just quickly going through reliability validity checks, but we can observe the data figures. Reliability figures are very much acceptable in terms of data. And since the data was observed through already developed scales, so we can't see any bigger issue as long as we are using those developed scales. So this is the same over here, the values of skewness, kurtosis, and then the other minimum and maximum values, which are absolutely fine. Here, the graph is, this table is highlighting about hierarchical multiple regression values, where we can see the first step, our first model is, in over there, sustainability awareness and material selection. The input variable, these are significantly observing towards sustainable construction practices. So we can say with a strong belief, these factors are playing a role towards dependent variable output. When we are moving towards second step, when we have involved financial constraint, we can see the model is slightly down. These input variables have lost their impact. At the same side, on the third stage, it was also, we can see the financial constraint is playing as a dominant moderating role towards self-awareness as well as material selection. So self-awareness, it is maybe slightly over than material selection. So of course, in this country, we can see financial point is a bigger problem. And this thing we have highlighted in the plot analysis as well, where financial aspect is at the low material selection and the high material selection, how it is making a bigger challenge towards sustainable construction practices. The final thing is about awareness, where we can see the major challenge, the graph is moving towards the other side. Okay, moving towards the second stage of AMOS analysis of structural question modeling, and the direct analysis is very much aligned towards hierarchical multiple regression analysis, where again we have observed sustainability awareness and material selection. These are positively accepted towards our output variable of sustainable practices. So this is the model which is observed after doing direct AMOS analysis. Finally, we have performed by involving mediating 4 factors, and it is a surprise for us to understand almost all the mediating factors. They are not playing as a mediating role. Those 4 factors are reducing rework, compliance improvement, waste reduction, and reduction rework. So it is very much clear. We can see the education or the awareness level is the major issue so far, and people are mostly taking the just a general aspect rather than taking a supporting factors in it. However, one factor is still observed over here, where people believe if they can go with the alternative construction method, they can adopt, they can get sustainable construction practices or on the development projects. So rather than all other relations were not accepted. In order to validate this thing, we observed other metrics-based approach, where we involved the 7 participants. These participants were having a really good experience in their field. For example, if we can see, one participant was from industry with the university reader experience. The second is in PhD at the moment. The other participants were mostly related to in profession, properly working their fields. So that is a kind of panel who also explained our views about the activities. And we, at the end of the moment, we run this operation in order to understand which factor play a role towards the other factor. And then finally, we found the driving power. And it was a surprising thing for us to understand. In order to having a views, it was coming as a driving power equal to all these factors, rather than there is any priority factor in terms of their, which was opposite to the earlier model. So they were all together into level 1, and that is also observed in the model. And finally, the model which came out after having a matrix equation, a matrix-based data, these were all interconnected factors, rather than the initial model where we observed the literature-based model is quite opposite to the existing model. So it can lead us a very supporting thing for the future. Maybe these all factors need to be very carefully considered for all city-based development projects inside developing countries, like cities in just like Ibadan. And maybe governments and different local educational institutions need to be put more training and development related activities into education. And the professional regulatory institutes are like the CIOB, as we see inside the UK, CIB all over the world. They normally work with the local industry or industry associations. Maybe such kind of plans can go with the positive side. And the laws need to be stringent, strict in term of compliance activities in order to ensure organizations are following properly for the compliance projects. And then finally, in order to meet the three principles of sustainability, reuse, reduce, and recycle of circular economy should be maybe used in order to control wastage in such cities. So such references have been highlighted over here for all, and for future and for all questions, I'm available for on such things. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. There's now a chance for questions and engagements, but I've looked at the number of people that should present, and I was looking for the presenters. So what I would suggest is that if you've got any questions, please put it in the chat box, and then we can then go from there. I will also then highlight those when we get to that. I still haven't seen the presenter number 3, so I'm going to go over to number 5, Sophie Ann Zavir and Lakshmi A, also from India, identification of index to qualify gentrification. I think this might also fit in nicely with the first presentation. If you can maybe share your presentation, and then we can take it from there.
Am I audible? Hello. Hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it's loading. Yes, you can continue.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Sophie. Thank you for this opportunity to present my paper at this distinguished event. I'm currently in my final semester on Masters in Planning, specializing in housing from College of Engineering, Trivandrum, Kerala, India. And this work is part of my dissertation. That paper title is Identification of Indices to Quantify Gentrification. So gentrification is the process in which due to certain in a neighborhood, due to certain gentrification drivers and gentrifying agents like property developers, policymakers, etc. The neighborhood, the wealthier social class moves in, and poorer social class get displaced, and the neighborhood get gentrified. These have some effects on the displaced, effects on those who live in gentrified neighborhood, and those effects on health also. So here we can see how the definition of gentrification changed from 1996 to 2000, and gentrification can be defined as a shift in neighborhood composition happens due to its upgrading, and thus the influx of affluent household into a low-income neighborhood, changing it unaffordable to the original resident and eventually leading into their displacement. So there are different impacts of gentrification, like it has both positive and negative impacts. The positive impacts include stabilization of declining areas, increased property values, increased revenues, reduction of suburban sprawl, increased social mix. But at the same time, it has negative impacts like as displacement through rent and price hike, secondary psychological cost of displacement, property price increase, loss of affordable housing, etc. So these are some of the literature studies that I conducted for identifying the methods they used for mapping or quantifying gentrification and the major research gaps in the field of gentrification. The major research gap, especially in India, where I'm coming from, are limited focus on spatial analysis, that is including the use of GIS and other spatial analysis tool to better understand the dynamics of gentrification and its effects, and lack of comparative studies, inadequate information on the indicators and methods. Majority of the studies concentrate on the effects of gentrification, that it is basically a qualitative research. Then a lack of studies on different types of gentrification. Next one is inadequate data and policy analysis, so that we can't devise an effective solution to deal with the negative effects of gentrification on the vulnerable communities. And next one is focus is on specific Indian cities only. That is the majority of the studies in gentrification in India has concentrated on Mumbai or Delhi. Actually, there is only limited studies focusing on gentrification in the suburban areas, where planners can actually contribute to strategies for its balanced development and its mitigation in the early stage itself. So from this, the need of the study is devised, that is due to inadequate database and policy analysis, the negative effects on vulnerable communities due to gentrification cannot be determined in case of Indian cities. So there is a need for understanding indices to quantify gentrification for further statistical analysis and spatial analysis rather than a qualitative analysis. So mapping of gentrification hotspot and planning for inclusive development will help to mitigate the negative impacts of gentrification at its early stages. So as part of my thesis, this study is used as a base, as a preliminary step, so that it can be used for further understanding the potential utility of GIS for visualizing and predicting the spatial patterns and trends of gentrification to identify the problem areas. The research question is how to formulate a methodology to quantify gentrification. The aim of the study to identify indices for quantifying gentrification. There are major three objectives. The first objective is to understand the concept of gentrification. Second, to understand the existing method for quantifying gentrification to identify indices for quantifying gentrification. So the study can be utilized for the creation of a spatio-temporal analysis map of an area, and strategies for inclusive planning can be developed. The limitation, not all forms of gentrification are addressed here. The study is only focused on a few. The identified indicators alone cannot establish gentrification in a neighborhood. So the study is mainly focused on literature studies. That is, this is a methodology that I followed. It's divided into two stages. In the first stage, it is a background study which include major theories, where the identification of early attempts for formulating the determinants. Then the type of gentrification and its nature. It includes the different types are green gentrification, transit-induced gentrification, tourism gentrification, etc. And the major actors, effects on gentrification, and finally mitigation measures. Yeah. In the stage 2, it's a comparative analysis of different forms of gentrification. So basically, case studies on different forms of gentrification are collected globally, and identification of different methods used for its quantification and formulation, and its final formulation and classification of the parameters. So coming to the major theories related to gentrification, first one is the production side theory. This is by Neil Smith, towards a theory of gentrification, a back to the city movement by capital, not people. The three major determinants in the production side theory that discusses our first one is land value, house value, and sale price. Then coming to the rent gap theory, so the rent gap is the disparity between the potential ground rent level and the actual ground rent. So once the rent gap is wide enough, gentrification may be initiated in a given neighborhood by several different means, like land value and housing value. Then another theory is the consumption side theory, where the determinants are demographic changes, housing market dynamics, urban amenities, and changes in economic base. So coming to the different types of gentrification, first one is the green gentrification. So this basically happens when cleanup of pollution or provision of green amenities are provided in a neighborhood, which causing the rise in property values and and creates influx of wealthier residences, creating the displacement of the low-income existing neighborhood there. Then transit-induced gentrification. So existing transit-oriented development policies, this create higher accessibility to the higher income group to the transit corridors, and causes an increase in the real estate demand, and thus the low-income residences get displaced. The next one is the tourism-induced gentrification. As the name suggests, the residential area being converted to commercial or tourist places, and the original business being displaced by amusement park or tourist attractions. Next one is the new build gentrification. So the gentrification brought on by a new development project with new townhomes or other structures is known as new build gentrification. So this has another forms like gentrification due to technocentric development, which is I'm currently focusing on my thesis. The new build gentrification takes the shape of the construction of expansive apartment buildings, which the middle class then occupy. Then the studentification that takes place when a neighborhood becomes predominantly populated by students. Then super gentrification, this happens when an already gentrified neighborhood experiences one more stage of gentrification. So this is basically basically not found in Indian cities. It's basically in London, New York, etc. So the different types of gentrification are compared on the basis of different aspects like cause, features, consumer type of gentrifier, etc. The cause of different types of gentrifiers, that gentrification that we already discussed, the features are more or less similar. Students are the consumers in studentification, and high income groups are for super gentrification. The middle income group are the consumers for the rest of the type of gentrification, and direct displacement is not necessary in the case of studentification and new build gentrification. And there is a rapid rapid pace of change in the case of studentification and super gentrification, while in the case of others, it is slow change. The major examples for gentrification of Indian cities are Bangalore, Mumbai, Delhi, Hyderabad, Chennai. In case of tourism induced gentrification, it is basically Goa, Jaipur, Kerala. As mentioned earlier, for super gentrification, it is Brooklyn, New York, London, UK. Then coming to the impacts of gentrification, it has different effects on the displaced, like conversion of rental houses into apartment or buildings. They are forced out due to higher rent. Even they can afford the higher rent, they are no longer want to live due to the relocation of friends and family, and due to the neighborhood transformation. Then definitely there is racial discrimination. Moving can make it difficult to access social network, good food, and healthcare facilities, and and a decrease in affordable housing options. Then effects on those who live there. The gentrification has some positive impacts, like it should result in high tax collections for local government, which raise the quality of the municipal services. The characteristics of services frequently change to meet the needs and preferences of new inhabitants as a neighborhood demographic change. Then, but older homeowners in particular may have different needs from newcomers. As a result, may find up paying greater property taxes without a matching rise in the public services they need. And then some studies have shown that gentrification lowers crime rate. Others have shown that it raises crime. Then effects on health. Renovation of public areas, addition of new social services can create increased access to healthy food option. Increased physical activity and lower exposure to contaminants can improve health outcomes. Then loss of community asset and social network would result in reduce social capital and increase isolation. And then there is incidence of anxiety, depression, and cardiovascular diseases. Then decreased access to affordable housing, high quality healthcare, as people may force to move out the neighborhood, will result to satisfy with fewer healthcare facilities. Then some of the mitigation measures are affordable housing preservation, zoning ordinance, community land trust, rent control, promoting mixed income housing, community involvement, and encouraging active transportation. Then coming to stage 2 of the study. So an extensive literature review was conducted for identifying the parameters and methods for measuring different types of gentrification. Some of the selected case studies are for different types of gentrification are discussed here. First one is green gentrification in the case of Barcelona. So why Barcelona? In the 1980s, for a low carbon society, Barcelona developed sustainability plans which created emphasis on improving parks, forests, ecological corridors, etc., which resulted in green gentrification of the area. So here what they did is they selected 18 parks as the study area. The parks which are built with those neighborhood with a per capita income below Barcelona's average that historically had poor access. So those parks were selected for the study. So then 6 of the parameters considered are percentage of population with a bachelor's degree or higher, percentage of population over 65 years or old living alone, percent of immigrant population from global north and south, race, home sale values, and household income. So these are the maps that they created using geographically weighted regression. And here we can see these maps were overlaid and the green gentrification in Barcelona is mapped. So the study indicates that the clear gentrification trends in several historically disenfranchised areas of Barcelona. The future study should expand methods like GWR that helps to pass out causal role of parks and other green infrastructure in process of gentrification. Next one is a case from India, that is transit-induced gentrification, Bangalore. So the study is an attempt to provide an evaluation of the current TOD policies to guide the policymakers in developing more equitable and sustainable transit and TOD policies in future. So this is a study area, Yashwantpur industrial area that they selected, where the boundaries and current land use characteristic within a half-mile radius of metro station is mapped. So the major research question is, how does the travel behavior of gentrifiers different from that of the non-gentrifiers in station areas, influence of socio-economic factors in choosing public transport, influence of mass transit on changing travel behavior of TOD residents. The methodology that they followed, they used the method of binary logistic method to predict commuting by public transit. The indicators used are house price, rent, house area, household size, buildage, occupation, etc. Then next one is a case of Chennai in India. So this is a case of new build gentrification, a case study of Sholinganallur along the IT corridor of Chennai. So due to the establishment of the IT corridor, this area had an influx of young educated IT professionals. More than 100 employees work at the IT companies present in this belt. So the population is currently around 35,000 and the area is 10.5 square kilometer. So this neighborhood on this corridor has been influenced by urban development, where growth is concentrated only along the IT corridor. In the graph shown on the right side, we can see from 1991 to 2011, there is a rapid increase in the population of Sholinganallur. In the area, they offer a wide range of social infrastructure ranging from retail centers like shopping malls, restaurant, educational institution. The Special Economic Zone Act provide tax concession to the companies that set up their offices in the SEZ. And the emergence of IT sector in the neighborhood of the Sholinganallur lead to an increase in the residential real estate demand in the area, caused the doubling of the population from 2001 to 2011. Then we can see there is a shift from the manufacturing sector towards service sector, especially in the IT sector. They generally include people between the age of 21 to 35 with a graduate degree in the information technology sector. Due to their cosmopolitan nature, these people seek a lifestyle including entertainment, food, and shopping experience differ from the traditional culture of the city. Then these are some of the changes due to gentrification. The land use in Sholinganallur has been transformed largely into mixed use and industrial. In the early 2000s, the land use along the IT corridor part of Sholinganallur was predominantly residential buildings, which is marked in yellow color. The non-commercial traditional low-rise residential development are now being continually pushed away from the corridor, denying its residents of inclusive development. Here we can see from the images that the public places in the core city where affordable street cafes were there, they were converted to public, they were converted to city malls. Then affordable restaurants in the core city converted to high-end restaurants. Affordable street markets converted to private hypermarkets. Affordable public transport, this turned to high-cost air-conditioned public transport on the IT corridor. Next case is the tourism-induced gentrification case study from Spanish Mediterranean coast. So the study presents a methodology that can be used to identify neighborhood under tourism intensification process. Here they use GIS mapping. Some of the parameters that they used for the study are citizen initiatives, population Airbnb data, tourist accommodation, cultural equipment, catering to rate restaurants and terraces that were offered in 2019 according to open access platform from local administration. So these are the areas that they marked as hotspot for tourism intensification, tourism gentrification. This is basically done using Pearson correlation analysis. Then another thing is the triangle. Another thing is the comparison of the 4 neighborhoods using data triangulation. Then as an inference to the literature review conducted, the indicators used, period of time for analysis, method used for the study for different types of gentrification are classified. The identified, so here we can see indices for transit-induced gentrification, green gentrification, studentification, and these parameters, the identified parameters are classified into leading indicators, secondary indicators, and other indicators. The leading indicators are household income, educational attainment, age, home ownership, race, household size, occupation, etc. The secondary indicators are physical activities, unmarried couple, independent lifestyle, sense of community, number of renovations, perception of safety in the neighborhood, health, etc. Then the other indicators are social media usage, vacant properties, vehicle emissions, perception of green areas by children and adults. So these are some of the methods majorly used for for quantifying gentrification. That is what some of them are GI star method, Pearson correlation analysis, binary logistic regression model, geographically weighted regression model, and data triangulation. As a conclusion, gentrification is a dynamic phenomenon that cannot be adequately represented by a single indicator or data source. So planners can use both secondary data to get a cross-sectional and longitudinal perspective on how these indicators have changed over time and how they compare in those different neighborhoods. The level of gentrification in a community can be better understood using these identified methods. Along with the range of indicators that is identified, secondary data as well as empirical research like field observations, stakeholder interviews are also needed for a complete picture of how gentrification has impacted a region. As a way forward, as mentioned earlier, the study can be used as a preliminary step to quantify gentrification in a neighborhood. The accuracy of the result can be improved by including qualitative indicators also. So as part of my thesis, the gentrification in a certain area is currently mapped using secondary data and empirical study like field observation and expert discussion in addition to the identified indicators. That's all.
Thank you very much. I allowed you to go a bit over time because I think you had provided us with quite good indicators and research. So really thank you for that. I just want to check. I've been checking just to see if some of the other presenters are available and online. I just want to double check before I go over to questions. Anupriya Agarwal or Kunan Prakash, I haven't seen them. If they are here, if they can just unmute or just confirm that they are here. Then Brian Holland, I haven't seen him either. Then Shailet Nyamwanza, Mutiti Masikiwa, and James Chakwazira. I haven't seen any of them here. And then Priska Simbanyengavi. I've also not seen you here.
Sorry,
Yes.
Chair, I am here. It's Pride Ndlovu. I'll be presenting the paper with Priska.
Oh, okay. So sorry, I wasn't aware of that. So thank you. If I can ask you to put up your presentation, and then we can, after your presentation, I think we can then go into questions and discussions. And I see there's already some questions in the chat. If there's any other questions, please do add it to the chat, that we can then also ask the presenters to comment on that. We can see your screen. If you can just put it on slide. Yes, there it is. You're welcome to proceed. But you are muted. I can't hear you, so if you can perhaps just unmute.
Oh, sorry about that, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. So my name is Pride Ndlovu, and I'm presenting this paper on behalf of all my colleagues, and our topic is municipal land leases, a solution to inclusive social housing in South Africa. So the outline of the paper, we've got the introduction and all those points up until conclusion and recommendation. So if we could just start by reminding ourselves why we have cities, why do cities emerge? The earliest known cities started to emerge following the Neolithic revolution, which was the agricultural revolution. So because of that surplus in agricultural production, people started to, trade the excess food production, which then led to more and more people coming closer to these spaces, and these spaces becoming denser, densely populated. And people started specializing in different activities, and these activities became the economic activities which rendered these spaces the economic hubs of the cities. So in a market-based model of city creation and growth, if we just discount the non-economic reasons, there are four pillars that guide the creation of cities: the comparative advantages and exchange of goods and services, the existence of scale of economies that contributes to this formation of cities, and the physical proximity of producers and that facilitates innovation and learning. Hence, there are also other related resources or spaces that emerge from there, like universities and other spaces. Collective consumption of, some public goods that requires physical proximity. It could be examples like your churches, your temples, etc. They can also lead to creation of cities. So if we now look at the structure of cities in South Africa, we are well aware that, originally segregation was a key way of, outlining cities in South Africa. As you can see, the white population were more closer to the city, and the Black population were further away from the city. So exclusive colonial legacy still exists because we have not been able to really deal with it effectively. So there are policies to undo the colonial legacies that we have, but considering we are still having the same discussion to this day, about 20 or 29 to 30 years later, it means these policies have not, they are not robust enough, or we have not been able to implement them properly to try and bring people closer to the activities where they work. So now we are suggesting that minimal strides have been made for inclusivity in these spaces. When we look at the structure of cities, we know that a land that is closer to cities is also very expensive. So if the land that is closer to cities is very expensive, it therefore follows that not everyone is then able to afford to have this, or rather to have access to this land that is close to cities, and they are therefore unable to easily engage in different economic activities that take place within this district. So additionally, we make a point that there are new nodes that are emerging. You would see in Johannesburg, you would see economic hubs such as your Sandton, examples in KZN, you see economic hubs such as Umhlanga, the east of Pretoria, and so forth around the country, right? And these economic hubs are growing, and these hubs are seen as another form of excluding people, which is not traditionally using race, but it's using price. So it becomes difficult because of the cost of the land in these types of nodes that are emerging. It's very difficult for people to access land in these areas. So now, if land is inaccessible and people aren't able to move closer to these spaces where there is economic activity, we find ourselves having a huge shortage of housing for people, particularly social housing for people in these spaces. Due to this spatial inequality, over 43% of the population living in townships lives in the outskirts of these cities, and we do know that staying on the outskirts of these cities has great disadvantages for people. So if we look at the housing and economic disparities, we break them down into 4. We say the impact of apartheid on land prices is creating a big problem for access to land. We know there's high poverty in areas away from economic hubs, as people often end up unemployed or struggle to get opportunities that are far away from these economic hubs. And we also identify a mismatch between job locations and work. So we do have jobs available in economic hubs. However, people are located far away from these economic hubs. So you find that a mismatch, and this exacerbates urban informality because now people end up, moving to the cities in search of these opportunities, and they end up living in informal settlements. So, looking at the importance of social housing. So one of the key things is social housing addresses the historical social injustices. So in a country like South Africa, where apartheid policies led to segregation and exclusion, so integrated social housing can serve as a means to rectify historical injustices, and it will promote inclusivity and provides opportunity for the marginalized communities. So it can also reduce spatial inequity, and concentrated pockets of poverty and exclusion can perpetuate cycles of disadvantages. So integrating social housing in urban areas will help reduce spatial inequality by providing low-income families with access to better job opportunities, education opportunities, health facilities, and many other facilities that they can access in these economic hubs. It also promotes, social cohesion. It also helps with breaking the cycle of poverty. So the integrated social housing will provide a stepping stone for low-income families to help break the cycle of poverty. So the access to stable housing can improve the overall well-being of people, educational outcomes for children, and access to health care, therefore creating a better pathway to upward mobility. So the optimal land use as well, integrated social housing encourages optimal land use by utilizing available urban spaces more efficiently. So this will help, combat urban sprawl and reduces transportation costs for residents and promotes sustainable development. So a model for inclusive urban planning is also important in that successful integration of social housing serves as a model for future urban planning and development. It will demonstrate that cities can grow inclusively whilst promoting equitable access to housing and different services. So the key challenges in social housing development are really the high land costs that we find near the economic hubs. So developers identify opportunity, particularly developers in housing, but these opportunities become unfeasible for private developers, and therefore they opt for land that is, far away from cities to actually try and assist with a creation of social housing. This obviously creates the same problem that we're trying to actually get out of, which is trying to be inclusive in these economic hubs. And we have also the rise of informal settlements as a result, because people are trying to actually move closer to the cities, but they can't because they are inaccessible in terms of the land cost and affordability. So when we look at a framework that we're proposing for housing inclusivity, we look at land restitution, land redistribution, and land tenure. And we look at the land restitution. It can help with, a return of land to the dispossessed communities or individuals who were removed. And then incorporating social housing under this framework will involve identifying areas from communities where displaced and that were displaced, and allocating land for housing, and also just identifying land that is close to the economic hubs. And redistribution, so it's just the equitable land allocation that will help integrate social housing projects as part of the land redistribution process, allocating suitable land to provide housing opportunities for the marginalized, but also mixed income communities can also have access to that space. And land tenure, the securing of tenure rights, and collective ownership or some form of recognized type of ownership that can give owners or communities safety and security in these spaces. And municipalities as well could be one of the recommendations that could work. So in terms of the methodology we used, so it was a qualitative study. About 20 housing experts, including developers, were interviewed, and data was collected using semi-structured interviews, and it was analyzed using thematic analysis. And in this analysis, 5 themes emerged, and the first one was looking at releasing this land for social housing through triple Ps for inclusive impact. So the findings revealed that developers and other housing experts involved in social housing believe there is extra pressure on the cost of land closer to economic hubs, which makes it very expensive and inaccessible. And if it's inaccessible or if it's too expensive, it makes their developments unprofitable. And therefore it becomes very difficult for them to actually pursue those opportunities for social housing. So this has then led to developers then choosing to continue buying land that is in the outskirts and develop that kind of land for social housing in partnership with municipality, which then defeats the whole purpose of trying to move people that are far away from the economic hubs closer to the economic hubs. So the other finding is we need to use long-term land leases by municipalities. So because land costs are quite high around the economic hubs, so the recommendation is municipalities must work together to identify with different housing development agencies to identify land belonging to the city and give it to social housing agents for development of social housing. So they could structure these 20-year, 30-year long-term leases so that the cost of land is not a big factor for developers to actually put their feasibilities together. And then conversion of decayed buildings into low-income housing for rent. So there's a lot of dilapidated, buildings. So the findings was that a whole lot more could be done at a much more rapid pace than we see now, where these dilapidated buildings can be regenerated into rental housing units that could be useful to assist people that are actually on the outskirts of the economic hubs. So design mixed-use developments as well. So mixed-use developments were also viewed as a solution to promote housing that is closer to economic hubs, understanding that incentives attached to MUDs can unlock cross-subsidization possibilities to some other form of real estate. You could find that there's mixed-use developments can grow further into other forms of assets that could support the initial part of the mixed-use development. And also the use of government tax incentives for social housing in greenfields was a theme that came through. So government can look at assisting private developers that are using private land with some rebates to bring the cost of land down, so that they are able to invest more and into housing, social housing developments, and also help government in actually trying to fulfill their plans of trying to integrate communities that are not in these economic hubs. Okay, so just as a conclusion, the key thing that we are recommending is that land is a big cost. So it's a major problem. Land cost is a major problem in the development of the low-cost housing near the economic hubs or metros in South Africa. And as we can see, we're saying it's no longer, the exclusion factor is no longer a race, but it's a cost, it's a price of land. And, we need to start looking at how, what is it that can be done to actually deal with this cost. And we believe that, municipalities having, tons of land close to economic hubs can assist by, giving this land on some type of leases to actually assist in building social housing that will incorporate different categories of people within the economic hubs. Thank you, Chair. I think that's all.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Pride. Really appreciate, and quite a number of interesting comments and notions that you've highlighted. I can also refer the participants to the Town Regional Planning Journal, an article that was published in 2019. It's volume 75. If anybody wants to have a look at that, it's also on the SACPLAN website available, where SALGO proposes to facilitate spatial transformation and inclusive economic growth through efficient urban land governance and management approaches. So I think that is something that links quite nicely to your research, right? So I think it would be good to also have a look at that. It's something that SALGO already looked at, and that might be a possibility that one can also look at. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to go through the chat box. I see that there's a couple of questions there. I'm not sure if the presenters had managed to have a look at that as yet. The first, I think, is more of a comment, which was then later, I think, addressed in the presentation as well from Suzeni, is I should think gentrification can also refer to rise of income levels of the poor, which necessitated them to improve their housing conditions. I think the two speakers that specifically spoke about gentrification, if you can have a look at that. Then Sophie, you indicated there might be instances where gentrification leads to positive change for some lower income residents. I think it's important to consider the broader impacts that often involve displacement, inequality, and cultural shifts. I think you also in your presentation highlight the positives and the negatives of the positive and negative impacts of gentrification. You did make reference to that. Then there was a question specifically for Sophie on gentrification indexes. The research is well done indeed. Thank you. And this is a question from Tobela. The research is well done. Thank you for that. I am particularly interested in the green gentrification, which also addresses the SDGs. Since the phenomena is focused on the middle class, how can the local government use this to possibly introduce or induce environmental awareness and compliance to include lower class areas so that they can also see the clean environments and convert that for themselves? So I think if you can maybe respond to that. And I think Sedzani, you also presented on gentrification. I'm not sure if you would also like to perhaps comment on that. I'm not sure if you, I'm sorry, I'm putting you on the spot, but yeah, Sophie, perhaps if you can respond to that question. Sophie, you are muted, so I'm not sure if you've tried to unmute yourself. I just want to confirm, can everybody hear me? I'm not sure if Sophie can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Okay, let me go to the next question. Sophie, if you can perhaps unmute and then respond. So Zunene also, I've got another question for Sophie. What factors influence studentification in Indian cities? Is it a lack of student hostels, or student hostels are expensive, or life of student hostels less friendly than live in a residential neighborhood? What are really the driving forces? Sophie, I'm not sure if you can hear us. If you can perhaps unmute and maybe just respond to those two questions. Sedzane, I'm not sure if you would like to perhaps comment or respond as well. Okay, sorry, I'm not sure what's happening. Why the presenters are not responding. Let me see. There's a Sophie. I see Sophie typed a response. I'm just going to read it so that everybody can see that. Is that the primary driver for studentification in India is the location of universities, colleges, and other educational institutions. Areas close to these institutions tend to attract students due to convenience in terms of commuting and access to campus facilities. An area become predominantly occupied by students when the hostels or rental accommodation near educational institutions are relatively affordable. Students are more likely to live in those areas. Some students prefer the independence of lifestyle that comes with living outside traditional student hostels. They might opt for sharing apartments or rented rooms to have more control over their living space. Long-term inhabitants get affected due to the studentification, due to the neighborhood change, mainly featured by upscale facilities for students. So that was the response from Sophie. Then Purity also asked a question, why can't we have those economic hubs where they are constructing those social housing schemes, since land that is closer to the CBD is expensive? I think, Pride, if you can perhaps respond to that question.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, I did explain that, you know, cities emerge because there is this economic activity. So, and everything follows, you know, the activity. So it's unlikely that, you know, a business would move to, you know, if I can call it loosely, a dry space there where there is no activity taking place, where there is no potential for growth of their businesses. So, you know, our view is cities emerge because there is activity, economic activity that's taking place, and that attracts growth and bigger activities, including residential, etc., because people need to participate in that activity. So if there's nothing existing outside in the outskirts, it's unlikely that businesses would prefer or would believe that it's easier for them to move in that direction. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. There's another question for you from Tobela. Excuse me. Who's saying also a very interesting viewpoint indeed, and well-researched. Thank you for the effort. So this speaks to real rights as a constitutional right also for citizens. How do we then effectively balance the scales in terms of giving citizens real ownership to land resources versus a lease, which is temporary form of real right? It may be rent to own viable in this regard. The question is maybe rent to own viable in this regard?
I think it could definitely be viable, but I think the focus was on really giving some type of access, whatever this access is, you know. So a lease where you're renting is one option. Rent to own, I think, would even be a better option. I don't know if my colleague is in the meeting, Priska. Maybe she may want to add something. Thank you.
Yes, Pride, I can hear you. These are good questions. But what we are looking at is the land that is owned by municipalities. So we are suspecting that when land is not built upon, that's why it attracts informal settlements. So we want to say, who owns this land? Can we use it as developers in a form of PPP? So if it is a municipality, then a municipality can sort of sell it to or donate it to the private developers, so that it doesn't, the cost is reduced to the developer. But for the green fields, where we're looking at new developments, usually in the outskirts, we can create new cities that are inclusive. So the only issue of leasing land for the land that is closer to economic hubs, where people can rent. Yeah, the issue of rent to own is something else that people, because the argument is that people who live in the informal settlements actually pay something. They actually rent, you know? So we want to convert that rental payment that people who live in formal settlements into a formalization where it's proper housing, quality housing that is built properly for people to be able to rent that and be able to afford that and live in the inner cities. That's the argument. Thanks, Pride. Thanks,
Yes, thank you very much for that. I think that is where the publication from Salga and would come in quite nicely, because I think that is what they were looking at, is how do they make available land that belongs to municipalities for development, and I think that's where that would come in. So if you haven't had a chance to look at that, I would really suggest that you also have a look at that specific article. I can, if you want, I can share information or a link to that article. I'll do that in the chat box just now. I see Sophie indicated that she has got internet connection problems or unstable. So if there's any questions that you want her to respond to, Sophie, you're most welcome to type. I see she also gave her email address, so you're most welcome to contact her. So I've got a question for Tsedzani. You've provided information on the mitigating strategies. So the one thing that I always look at is when you have research, how do you then bring that in practice? When we look at accreditation, we look at planning programs, we also look at how do you link that to practice. So my question is, your research, have you looked at approaching the municipality, Polokwane municipality perhaps, and see how that might have an impact or can be incorporated into their policies and programs. So how do you have you thought of changing that research into practice as well? Yeah. Tsedzani, I'm not sure if are you still here? Okay.
I think. Hello.
Yes, please proceed.
Yeah, I think you're referring to me. Are you referring the question to me? Maybe I didn't get how you pronounced my name.
No. It was the first presenter.
Oh,
Sizani
okay.
Sekunde.
Okay.
It was the first presenter. Yeah.
All right.
No, I don't think she's there anymore. Not sure if there's any other questions that anybody wants to ask. You're welcome to put up your. I'm not sure if you can put up your hand, or if you want to unmute, if you can, then you can just jump in with your question. I'm just quickly going to get the link to share with the members. If there's any other questions. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. I've just posted the link to that article in the chat box. So if you want to go to that, if you want to copy it or link into that, you're then most welcome. It is the title is Municipal Urban Land Release and Acquisition. It is a proposal to facilitate spatial transformation and the release of land. So that's part of a special edition that we published with the Town Regional Planning Journal on land and the land issue. I think I don't see any other hands or any other questions. Yes.
Martin, are you able to summarize a bit? Because we are curious about this one you have sent to us now. Maybe just a minute of it before we can read it, because you were part of it, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. So during 2016, the National Conference of SALGA resolved to assist municipalities to assist in the facilitation of spatial transformation and inclusive economic growth. And then at 2018, the National Assembly made a resolution that is a direct response to this, to see how SALGA can or what approaches can be there for local government and local government management to enable municipalities to negotiate better development outcomes on some of their own land. And I think what has been mentioned, and that's what was triggering my thought to this is a lot of or there's quite often land that is very well situated, that is belonging to the municipality or even provincial or national government. I think it's time, if we talk about inclusive cities, if we really want to have proper inclusive cities, we need to see how can we better utilize that land to also make it possible for communities to be closer to where they work and not spend the majority of the income on traveling to get to work. So I think that is what triggered the link to that specific decision is how can municipalities look at their land and what can they do and how can they make it available. I think very often and I've heard about what you've mentioned about the PPPs. At the end of the day, the majority of private developers, they're there for the bottom line. So when they do development, that is what they are looking at. And I think that is where government plays a very important role to then fill that gap where the private developers do not want to go because of the return, or that the return is not what they are looking at. But then also with regard to the availability of financing, it is those people that falls outside of the RDP houses type of developments, but they do not qualify for the bonds that the financial institutions are providing. And I think that's where the social housing aspect comes in. And it was an interesting notion to say rent to buy. What would that possibility be? And I think that is where land available to government, land available to all the spheres of government, that might be an option. So that is what triggered my thought. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Martin.
Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is 3 minutes to 2 o'clock. This session for the questions and engagement has been scheduled until 2 o'clock. I know that some of you might have other activities that they would want to attend. I want to thank you from my side as the chair of this session, the room chair, but also the organizers for participating. And I hope I see that there was an email shared that the communication and interaction goes on much longer than just today. Tomorrow is the third day, which is said to be the grand finale plenary. So if you can, I would urge you to also attend that, so that we can also close this second international conference on inclusive cities on a high note. Thank you very much, and thank you for the presenters. Thank you for the participants. Hope you've got a good day further. Good day.
Thank you so much. Thank you.